Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Department of Toxic Substance Control public meeting and hearing on the draft permit for the Fibrotech Inc. Santa Fe Springs facility. We will be referring to Fibrotech Inc. as PTI throughout the rest of this meeting. My name is Tammy Pickens. I am a public participation specialist with the Department of Toxic Substance Control, which we will refer to as DTSC through the rest of this meeting. Next slide. Simultaneous interpretation is available through Zoom. Okay, so for those of you joining in Spanish, please click on the globe located in the toolbar located at the bottom of your screen and select Spanish. If you're joining in English, go to the same globe on the toolbar and click English. Tonight's presentation materials is in Spanish and English are available at the DTSC web link provided in the chat. When you go to this link, select the Community Involvement tab to locate the presentation. You are in a listen and view only role. If you have a question, do not use chat. Use Q&A for questions. We will respond to questions during the Q&A section. We will take comments during the public hearing section of this meeting. Automatic closed captions have been turned on for this meeting. You can turn them off by clicking the CC icon or move the caption box. The closed captions are only in English only. Next slide. The public meeting and hearing. We will have the public meeting, the permitting process overview, the draft permit decision, Q&A section. Then we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll go into the public hearing, where we'll receive the public hearing instructions and formal comment sections. And then we'll have the next steps and closing. Remember, the presentation materials are in English and Spanish in the link provided in the chat. Next slide. In the meeting guidelines, by participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise. During the question and comments, we will focus on topics related to today's presentation. Time allows for questions and comments may be limited so everyone can participate. Thank you for your patience and understanding. Next slide. From the list of individuals, you'll see we have a big project team to support this effort. Many are in attendance in this meeting. Next slide. I will now introduce Phil Bloom, the supervising hazardous substance engineer in the permitting division. Phil?
Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate the introduction. Pardon me, get my voice in order. My name is Phil Bloom. I'm a licensed California civil engineer, and I have been with DTSC since 1994. And initially I worked in the permitting program. Then after that, I worked in enforcement. And after that, I worked in the cleanup program. Finally, I came back to permitting as the supervisor of the permitting unit in Chatsworth. And so that means that I'm responsible for this draft permit process for DTSC. And the project manager, Rao, reports to me. So I've worked on some of the most challenging and difficult projects that DTSC has oversight over, including for permitting, for enforcement, and for cleanup. Next slide, please. So I would like to introduce DTSC. Who are we at DTSC? Well, we are over 1,000 professionals and experts. We're engineers, we're scientists, we're toxicologists, chemists, geologists, attorneys, criminal investigators, and professional administrative staff, and a whole variety of support staff. We're committed to protecting Californians and the environment. Next slide, please. So, at DTSC, we are really dedicated to the task that we have been assigned. We are here to protect the environment, to protect the public from the potential hazards of toxic, hazardous waste and of the facilities. Here is our mission at the DTSC Permitting Division. The Permitting Division protects Californians and the environment from toxic harm by making timely, enforceable, and protective permit decisions for the operation of hazardous waste facilities in accordance with all applicable laws and sound science. So that really is our mission, and we seek to achieve that mission every decision we make every day. Next slide, please. So, I would like to give a little bit of context for what we're doing, for why we're here. How did we get here? This is kind of a bit of a dry list of dates and bullet points, but really this reflects that in California, we have been concerned about the potential hazards of hazardous waste and how to make sure that it's managed safely since the 70s. We were amongst the first in the nation to create a law specifically to manage hazardous waste. That was the 1972 California Hazardous Waste Control Act. It wasn't until 4 years later that the United States Resource Conservation and Recovery Act became law. In 1978, Love Canal happened. It really became a matter of grave public concern when it was found that a housing development was built on top of an old hazardous waste landfill. And so that really created an impetus for the profoundly strong regulation of the hazardous waste industry. And California and the US EPA, we've taken that on. In 1991, DTSC and Cal EPA were established, and so finally we got authorization to implement the federal law in 1992. Now, many things happened up until more recently, but I really want to emphasize that in 2013 all the way to the present, DTSC has undergone a very thorough evaluation of our permitting program, and we have implemented extensive permitting process improvements, and we'll talk more about those later. But I want to emphasize that if anybody wants to find out more about DTSC and the history of the hazardous waste regulation program, please visit our website. Marcus is going to paste that website into the chat, so if people want to be able to click on it, you can do so. Next slide, please. Of course, all those laws and regulations, they have very detailed requirements for the regulation and the permitting of hazardous waste facilities. But really, I want to kind of boil that down for the purposes of this meeting into these 5 steps. So before a permit application is even submitted, DTSC engages with the prospective permit applicants. We advise them of the requirements that we expect all of the permit applications to contain, the requirements, the laws and the regulations that they have to meet. We answer any questions they have, and then only after that do they prepare their permit application and submit the permit application to DTSC for review. That's box number 2. So after receiving a permit application, we have kind of a multi-step process. The first step, we just make sure that it includes all of the basic requirements. And if it doesn't, we reject it immediately. We tell them what they have to include in there, and then we'll reject it or deny it if they don't provide a complete application. Once we get that administratively complete application, then we review it in excruciating detail. We check every single aspect as to whether it meets the regulatory or statutory requirements. And if it doesn't, we'll give them a notice of deficiency, which is a written explanation of each and every deficiency and what they're required to do to correct it. And we'll refer them to the law or the regulation where it explains exactly what they have to do. Finally, assuming that the applicant submits a permit application that meets our requirements, then we'll prepare a draft permit decision. Now, in this case, our draft decision is to issue a permit. We could also, if we had decided that the application was not adequate, we could deny it. That would also be a permit decision. But in this case, we have tentatively agreed to issue a permit. So we have a draft permit decision that's up for public review during this comment period. And next slide. Oh, it's all right. I beg your pardon. Go back. I didn't finish that slide. Apologies, James. Can you go back? Oh, here we go. Okay. So of course, during this comment period, we have a 60-day comment period for the DTSC's draft decision on the FiberTech permit. Like I mentioned, we are tentatively agreeing to issue a permit. The draft permit is available for public review, and we have posted it on the website and prepared notices and sent them out and community updates. So hopefully everybody here has had an opportunity to see that draft permit and the permit application and many of the supporting documents. And then, of course, after the close of the comment period, we'll review the comments. We'll evaluate whether we should approve or deny the permit. If we decide we're going to approve it, we'll either approve it as it is, or if the comments convince us that there should be changes made to the draft permit, well, we will make those changes and then we'll make a final permit decision. And then after that, if there's anybody that made a comment that believes that we made the wrong decision, that decision is subject to appeal. All right, next slide, James. So in addition to all of the hazardous waste permitting laws and regulations, DTSC has to comply with another law. It's the California Environmental Quality Act. And really, the California Environmental Quality Act applies to all public agencies in the state of California that make decisions that could have a significant impact on the environment. Now, in this case, DTSC is making a decision about a permit application. If we decide to approve a permit, there's a potential that decision could have an impact on the environment. So under CEQA, we evaluate the potential impacts of our decision. Now, with respect to FiberTech, there was already initial permit that DTSC reviewed, and we conducted our CEQA review at that time. We prepared an initial study, negative declaration, mitigated neg deck. Well, before I get to that part, there are 4 potential documents that we could prepare under CEQA. One, we could decide that actually there's no potential for an impact to occur, and that would possibly be exempt. If there was potential for a significant impact, we would prepare an initial study. Either the result of the study could either be a negative declaration, meaning no significant impacts were found, or if the initial study identified potential significant impacts, but we decided that certain limitations on the project or other actions could eliminate the significant impacts, then we could prepare a mitigated negative declaration. Finally, if it were determined that there may be significant impacts that can't be mitigated, we could prepare an environmental impact report, and that would have to explain all of the potential impacts and identify if there was a reason that the permit or a decision should be approved anyway, in which case we would make a statement of overriding considerations. That hasn't been necessary in this case. And then finally, if there is already an existing environmental document of one of the former types that I described, then the agency could prepare an addendum. And so that's what we've done in this case. Next slide, James. So this is a history of how we've implemented CEQA with respect to the FibreTech permit. So like I mentioned earlier, we had a CEQA document in 1990, an initial study and negative declaration. 1991, we had a final initial study and negative declaration, and it found that there was no significant impacts related to the approval of the the FibreTech permit at that time. In 1991, of course, we filed a notice of determination. So that was the official determination that was filed with the State Clearinghouse. And then following up on that, we have now conducted our CEQA review of this permit decision in March of 2020. We prepared an addendum to the previously adopted final initial study and negative declaration, that 1991 document that I mentioned earlier. And so basically what it means is that the changes that were made to the permit application and the permit in this most recent version don't pose any significant impacts that weren't already considered in 1990 and 1991, and therefore an addendum is the appropriate document. Next slide. So with that presentation introducing DTSC and our permitting program, I'd now like to introduce Rao Akula, professional engineer. Rao is the project manager for DTSC's permit application review of the FibreTech permit application and preparation of the draft permit. He's a senior hazardous substances engineer and project manager for the permitting division. Rao?
Thank you, Phil. Good evening. Like Phil mentioned, I'm the project manager for this draft permit effort. I'm a California licensed chemical engineer. I have lived and worked in Southern California for 32 years and counting. I have worked in the private industry as well as the government during these 32 years. I first joined the department in the year 2000. In DTSC, I worked in two programs, permitting and cleanup as a project manager, as a supervisor, and as a senior engineer. Next slide, please. This slide contains all the topics I'm going to address in my part. First, about the process specific to PTI draft permit, then a little bit of history, and then I'll describe about what's different now, how the permit application looks like, and then I'll explain about the draft permit. Next slide, please. This slide basically describes the process, this permitting process that Phil explained briefly before, specific to the FibreTech permit. We have prepared a number of documents that I listed there in the first bullet, and we have put out all these documents are on the in the public repositories and also online, available on DTSC EnviroStore. And we issued a public notice and for the review of the draft documents. Where we are right now, this is a public meeting and hearing to collect the public comments. And after this 60-day public comment period, which ends on October 19th, we will prepare a response to comments document that would have all the responses in writing for all the questions that are submitted in writing. And we also will make sure there is sufficient amount of money is in place in the financial assurance mechanism. And then we will make a permit DTSC determination on the permit, whether to approve or deny. And then finally, we'll file the determination with the State Clearinghouse. Next slide, please. Here is an aerial view of the Fibertech facility and its surrounding area. Those of you who have access, there is going to be a link that is being placed. You can separately after the meeting go there and explore this link to in greater detail about the vicinity of the facility. Next slide, please. This is a very high-level overview of the facility. It is in a 5-acre piece of land. It receives hazardous waste and virgin materials and takes them in and makes some products, inorganic products for sale, and also produces some more wastes. Next slide, please. What you see here, there is a link here for the Fibertech website. This is the facility's own website. It describes who they are, what they do. Those of you who are interested are encouraged to go there. Briefly, for the purpose of this meeting, what comes into the facility are inorganic hazardous waste streams. They can be regarded as hazardous waste, and the RCRA, or United States federal regulations, are in the California regulations, and chemical products are made, and those are by treating and recycling the hazardous waste. The products are sold to the industry. Basically, the waste come from computer manufacturing and printed circuit boards. And the names of the products from the facility are copper carbonate, copper oxide, copper sulfate, and ferrous chloride. Next slide, please. So we provided a timeline of the facility's history for context. It was a chemical manufacturing facility since the 1950s, and Fibertech has been the owner since 1994. Next slide, please. So the facility was first issued a permit by United States EPA and CA, California DHS, the Department of Health Services, which later became a part of that, which was Toxic Substance Control Division, became DTSC. So the permit renewal application was submitted in 1996, and it was revised multiple times. And the modifications you see here are requested by PTE, that is a normal process. Most of them are based on DTSC directives. So to describe the permit history itself, there were two separate efforts. First, until 2010, when a draft permit was prepared, based on the feedback and comments received, DTSC asked PTI to completely revise the permit application resubmit. So in a sense, there was a new start in 2014. And using the notice of deficiency process, there were two more formal revisions in 2016 and 2021. So that's what happened in terms of permitting history. Next, and I just want to say, this slide suggests PTI have been under the oversight and regulatory authority of DTSC the entire time, conducting many activities like corrective action, inspections, permit modifications, etc. Next slide, please. So 1991 was the original permit. What has changed right now since then? What I would like to say is this kind of explains a brief bullet kind of thing.
Now, if I may, I think you got at the slide got advanced before you were ready. If that's correct, James? Is that right? You should be on slide 22 now, right? Is that right? Is that right, Ron?
Correct. You're right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Apologies for the interruption. I just want to make sure we're all on the same track. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. James, can you put slide 20? Thank you. So this is basically a brief description of what's different now compared to the original situation where permit was issued. Fibertech has closed a surface impoundment that had been an issue for many years. The pond is called Pond 1. Fibertech has cleaned up the hex chrome in the soil to levels that are safe. Fibertech must now submit a post-closure permit application for the closed Pond 1. Fibertech must continue to monitor groundwater for evidence of the mobilization of the constituents in the soil, and the maximum risk levels associated with the proposed operations are really safe. So that's briefly what is different now. Can we go to slide number 23, please, James? Okay, so these are a few more bullets of what's different. The permitted treatment capacity has been reduced or restricted to ensure safety of the operations. And the permit application does not have any claims of any regulatory exemptions in the name of recycling. So all the past enforcement issues around the issues of exclusions or exemptions have now been resolved. And RCRA listed waste are special kinds of waste that can technically remain to be hazardous waste even after treatment. That type of lists are no longer going to be processed at the facility, or they won't be even received. The new permit application proposes that such waste will not be brought in for treatment or storage at the facility. The operational change will make inspections and enforcement more straightforward. Next slide, please. So the first bullet here covers many areas which will now be part of the new permit. There were enforcement issues and disputes over the past between the department and the permittee. They all have been settled and agreed to, and the permittee is now proposing to make these areas as part of the permitted operations. The second bullet describes some new constructions that are being authorized as part of this permit. And these are basically to make the facility more enforceable, more protective in a sense. So are the questions, so is the third bullet. So the last but not the least is there were many deficiencies in the prior permit. There were no special conditions, not many significant special conditions to speak of. But this permit has many more special conditions, over 100. Next slide, please. As I was mentioning, here are some highlights of what is different here. DTSC is issuing over 100 conditions for operating the facility, which are designed to make the facility operate safely and protect nearby communities. The previous permit was issued in 1991, did not have any unit-specific special conditions for operations. But now we have many special conditions, as I explained here. And there are fence line monitoring and a contingency plan is one of those things that are worth mentioning here, and also increased frequency. I'll have more details on what kind of special conditions are there a little later. But these are, we also, the financial assurance that we have, it is about the same as what we have now, but the location of these amounts would be changing. What we had in the past was more focused on cleanup at the site, and now it has moved on from there to kind of a post-closure kind of situation. And the money that is there would be adjusted accordingly to current context. Next slide, please. So here is a set of special conditions I just mentioned. Here are a couple of pictures that show the container storage, for example, how that looks like, and how DTSC has required that they be stored safely at clearly marked locations, and it would have the sufficient amount of aisle space, and it has restrictions on the stacking so that they're all safe. And what you see in the second picture are like alarms that are there for fence line monitoring of any hazardous substances that may get released by accident, so that we have live feedback, and these are to be managed. So these are, and one of the bullets you might notice is the annual public meetings in Santa Fe Springs. These will be conducted to provide a summary of all the environmental monitoring results to the community. This is also a condition as part of the draft permit. Next slide, please. Just another sample set of special conditions that were added. These reflect control measures aimed at safe operations and better oversight, such as tank integrity assessments to be done at least every 3 years, or sooner if it's required by the person who assesses the tanks. And also, what kind of waste would be received? How should they be tested? How do we make sure that there are no potential impacts on the environment? So these are just a sampling of over 100 special conditions that are there in the draft permit. I now would like to touch upon a subject that is of very high interest in the community. What kind of impact would this be on the community? DTSC has conducted extensive health risk assessments, and to introduce that, to explain that to you, I would like to invite our toxicologist, Unit Chief, Dr. Brian Endlich. Brian?
Thanks, Ralph. Good evening, everybody. I'm a senior toxicologist and supervisor. I've been involved in the risk assessment for both the permit renewal and corrective action activities at PTI since approximately 2004. I've been deeply engaged in consulting on the best practices to evaluate the health risks, and I've reviewed all the risk assessments since that time. As Ralph said, we've done a quite exhaustive investigation of health risks. And as you can, next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, there's two main sources of potential health risk. The first is from current daily operations of the facility. And you can see we have determined there's no significant health effect to either workers or residents. And the second source of potential risk is the historical releases. And as Ralph mentioned earlier, corrective actions have cleaned up substantial amounts of past releases. And so there are no essentially significant health effects for current workers or residents, and there's no current cancer risk. There is some potential health risk to future on-site workers if the pavement is disturbed, like during construction activities where they remove the asphalt cover. This would not happen unless a construction plan had been okayed, and the construction would be conducted and carried out by trained professionals. They would have appropriate protective equipment, and there would be engineering controls to help protect them. So essentially, quite a bit of cleanup activities have happened, a lot since 2015, and have reduced this risk. So we have shown through all the risk assessments that we've done that the operations and historical releases are safe, and that we have adequately provided protection of human health and the environment. And I will now turn it back to Ralph.
Thank you, Brian. James, can you please go to the next slide? So what we have presented to you are details of the draft permit that we have put up for public review. And if the permit is approved, this is what would be, what you would see. And this is basically a summary of what we just presented. I would like to say that our evaluation actually shows that the operations are safe, and DTSC has actually thoroughly reviewed the application and required extensive revisions. Like you see the bullets as I put up there. There are many more checks and balances that are in place. And to briefly talk about that, I would like to ask Phil Bloom to explain this one more time, the summary slide that we have here. Phil?
Thank you, Rao. All right. Well, so, as Rao explained in a lot of detail, and as I mentioned very briefly in my earlier comments, DTSC has conducted a very thorough evaluation of the permit application, and we've required it to be revised until we agreed that it adequately met the requirements of the regulations. And, given that, the big picture story here is that DTSC has reviewed the operations of the facility in great detail. We've required extensive changes to how the operations will be conducted under a new permit. And we believe that it demonstrates that the facility can be operated safely and in compliance with the regulations. If we weren't convinced of that, we would be denying the permit application. And, I have personally denied permit applications in the past when I was not convinced by the applicant that they could operate their facility safely and in compliance with the regulations. So that's not any kind of idle threat. DTSC has denied permit applications in the past, and we will do so in the future if we can't be convinced that they can operate safely. So, we have also developed extensive conditions, as Rao mentioned. I think there's something on the order of 176 permit conditions in the permit. We've explicitly defined the units where permitted activities are allowed to be conducted. We've imposed specific conditions for each of those units, indicating what is allowed and what's not allowed. And so it's actually, it's a good thing, not only from DTSC's perspective and from the perspective of the public and residents and interested parties, but in my mind, it's a good thing for Fibertech as well, because they are now very clear on the parameters under which they're allowed to operate the permit, should enable them to operate the facility in compliance and avoid being cited for activities that are not allowed. So that's my perspective on what this draft permit would, how it would allow the facility to be operated safely and in compliance. I will also mention one other thing. DTSC has recently put into place the violation scoring procedure, which applies to all active operating permitted facilities. And it is a way for us to take into account much more rigorously the cumulative score of the violations that facilities have been cited for, and to take into account those scores when we evaluate the permit renewals, or when we decide whether there should be is a reason to suspend or revoke the permit. So given all those things, I truly believe that we can be assured that the facility will operate in compliance and can be operated safely. Slide 30. So now we've come to the conclusion of our presentation about the draft permit, and we'll move on to the questions and answers section. And Tammy Pickens, our public participation specialist, would you please explain again how we can, how the public can engage in asking questions and how we'll be responding to them? And that would be slide 31, please, James.
Thank you, Phil. We are now at the Q&A portion of this presentation. This slide provides an overview of the 3 ways you can ask a question or make a comment. Zoom audio, use the raise hand feature, and you will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn. You can use the phone audio. Press *9 to join the phone queue, and I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Then press *6 to unmute. Text only, use the Q&A feature to have your questions read by the facilitator. We will listen carefully and do our best to answer your questions in this section. Answers will not appear in the response to comment document. If you want a written response to your comment, you must make it later during the hearing. Participants are requested to keep their questions brief and concise, to at least a minute or less. You may begin asking questions.
So, if anybody would like to ask a question, now is the correct time. I see nothing in the Q&A box, and I'm not seeing anybody raising their hands or indicating that they have a question.
Do we have anything on the Spanish? I too, Phil, don't see any hands raised or any questions in the Q&A.
So I'll give it another minute if anybody is just trying to madly type their question in and it's not working, or if you want to ask a question verbally, you can click the raise hand button. It should be down at the bottom of the screen. Hover your cursor down there, pointer, and you should see the little raise hand button. If anybody wants to ask a question, we'll give you another minute or two to get it into us. Maybe my lighting is intimidating. Let me see if I can do better here. I promise I won't be mean to you if you ask a question. Okay, maybe people are eager to get to the break part. Is that what I'm thinking here? Maybe. I know Tammy promised we'd have a 5-minute break after the Q&A. Maybe that's...
Okay, before we go to the 5-minute break, we'll ask, we have a caller online. The last 3 numbers, 3237. You may press *9 to join. Press *6 to unmute if you would like to ask a question. Okay, Phil.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being so patient. I guess, Rao, that means that our presentation was so comprehensive and so informative that nobody had any other questions. So good job. Thank you. Well, Tammy, please take it away. James, advance to the next slide, slide 32, I believe. And Tammy, I'll let you introduce our break and give the ground rules for what we're going to do when we come back. Thank you.
Everyone will take a 5-minute break. And when we'll come back, we'll enter into the formal public comment portion. 5-minute break.
So we come back at
6:54 p.m.
6:54 p.m. Thank you, Marcus.
Welcome back. We are now in the formal public comment portion of this meeting. Next slide. I will now introduce Phil Bloom, DTSC Public Hearing Officer. Phil.
Thank you, Tammy. Pardon me. So I'm going to ask James that you advance to slide 35. So Tammy, if you'd be so kind as to provide instructions for how to provide a comment.
Okay, Phil. If you want to provide a comment in this public hearing section, you can use the Zoom audio using the raise hand feature, and you'll be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn. You can use the phone audio, press *9 to join the phone queue. The facilitator will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Then you'll press *6 to unmute your line. You can use the text only, use the Q&A feature you have your answer read by the facilitator. The hearing comments will be answered in the response to comment document accompanying the final permit approval.
Okay. So I'm going to point out that so during this public hearing portion of the meeting, participants may submit a public comment. As Marcus mentioned, the meeting is being recorded, so we'll be recording those public comments. We're not going to respond to those comments. They'll be received as formal comments on as part of the administrative record for the permit decision. We will be preparing a response to comments document after we've received all the comments, including verbal comments from this meeting, as well as all the written comments that we've received during the comment period. Comment period goes from August 19th until October 19th. And so, pardon me. So, like I mentioned, we'll be preparing a formal written response to comments, and that response to comments will be issued when we make a final permit decision, and a copy of the response to comments will be sent to everybody that submitted a comment, as well as the applicant and some public agencies and entities as provided for in the regulations. So now I want to make sure that everybody's clear that we want to provide enough time for everybody who wishes to make a comment to be able to have time to make a comment. So I'm going to request that each commenter please keep their comment to no longer than 3 minutes. And if we have time after everybody who wants to make a comment has had an opportunity to make their 3-minute comment, and there's people that wish to make additional comments, we'll try to make sure that time, if time allows, we'll give everybody a chance to make all the comments that they wish to make. So now I'm also going to ask that if you're willing, when you make a comment, at the introduction of your comment, please state your name and spell your name so that we can be clear on the record who it is that's making the comment. And also, if you wish to receive the response to comments, it's very important that you either provide your address and spell your street so that we can be clear on the actual address, or your email address so that we can provide a copy of the response to comments by email. So with that being said, it is now 6:59 p.m. and we're going to start the public comment and hearing portion of tonight's meeting. So Tammy, do we have any comments? Or Marcus, if you're
We
receiving.
have thank you, Phil. There are no comments currently in the Q&A section, and there are no hands raised yet. We may want to just patiently wait in the event that folks may want to formulate their thoughts briefly. So let's just give it a minute.
That's great. And we're leaving up the instructions on how to make a comment. They should be visible on the screen. So we're leaving those up as you formulate your comment. There's those 3 different ways that you can submit a comment. So just to make sure we're clear on how to submit comments, as Tammy mentioned, if you're participating by Zoom, you can go to the lower portion of your screen where you're viewing the Zoom presentation. You should see an icon. It says raise hand. Just click on that raise hand button and we'll be able to observe that you have raised your hand. Now, you may have to hover your cursor at the bottom of your screen to make your chat bar, to allow the bar to be viewed on some monitors. So if you're having trouble finding that, you may want to try hovering your cursor down there. If you're joining only by telephone, as Tammy mentioned, press *9 to join the phone queue, and then we'll be alerted that someone's waiting to make a verbal comment by phone. And the facilitator will then tell you when it's your turn by saying the last 3 digits of your phone number. And when you hear those last 3 digits of your phone number, you can press *6 to unmute your line and then make your comment. For Spanish speakers, interpreter can let you know that you can also press the raise hand button and make your comment. And if you wish to submit a written comment using the Q&A feature, go ahead and click that Q&A button in your Zoom window and then type in your question there, and the facilitator will read them out so they'll be captured in the recording of the hearing. So Marcus, I feel like we're not getting any comments. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. Let me unmute my video here. I appreciate that, Phil. I think maybe just a reminder to all of our attendees that the comment period, again, runs through October 19th, and that folks can provide comments via mail and email. And I know one of our next slides actually provides that detail. So for those folks out there that are not prepared or willing to make a comment this evening, please take heart in knowing that you have more time to make your comment, and you can do it via email, mail as well.
So I want to remind everybody that DTSC has a public website. Marcus has posted several links to our public website in the chat. We also have an extensive amount of information about FiberTech, about all the documents that are part of the administrative record for our permitting decision. They're available, many of them are available online. If you find that you would like to review more of the administrative record, the full administrative record can be found at the DTSC file room in Chatsworth. Also, we have extensive documents available for public review. The hard copy documents in binders are available at the repository at the Santa Fe Springs Library. All you have to do is go there and ask them to see the FiberTech permitting decision documents in the repository. I'm sure they'll be able to point out to you where those documents are. And as Marcus mentioned, the comment period goes through October 19th. And we will then review all the comments. I assure you we will review them very thoroughly and carefully, and we'll prepare a written response. Like I mentioned earlier, if any of the comments point out any issues or errors that we haven't properly considered or taken into account, we may modify the permit, or conceivably we could decide to deny the permit application. And then in response to the comment, of course, and then we'll prepare the written response to comments. We'll prepare our final permit decision, and that permit decision is expected to be made next winter. We do not know how many comments we'll get, of course. Part of the uncertainty and the timing is whether we get a lot of comments or a few comments, and how significant they are, whether they cause us to consider changes to the draft permit and so on. So anyway, that's how the process works. I want to really thank everybody for participating in our meeting, and all the attendees for joining the public meeting. I really appreciate the opportunity to present our process, to explain the draft permit that we've prepared, and to provide any answers to questions and receive the comments. Although not having received any, I just am a little concerned that there's something wrong with the technology, but we've tested it before and it worked fine in our tests. So I'm willing to consider that it's possible that nobody has comments or questions, and we'll just look forward to seeing any comments that we receive by mail or by email. And thanks everybody for participating. Now, Marcus, did I miss anything, or are we ready to conclude the meeting?
There is a reminder slide, Phil.
Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rao. So, James, please advance to the next slide. That would be slide 36, right? Okay, great. So, as Rao pointed out, we have a reminder about how to submit a public comment, and we'll leave this slide up for a few minutes so that everybody can have a chance to read it for themselves. And Marcus, if you'd be so kind to copy and paste that link into the chat function, so people that are following along on Zoom, they can just click the link.
Before we conclude, Phil, don't forget to close the meeting. Close the hearing.
Oh, I will do so. Thanks for the reminder, Tammy. We'll give people a chance to look at this slide for a minute, though.
I just see a confirmation from one of the participants that the technology is working.
It is working. Okay, great. So can we, I think we somehow advanced past slide 36 without leaving it there for a minute for people to be aware of this. So how to submit a public comment. Slide 37 gave the link and some details about that. But as a reminder, if you didn't submit a comment during the meeting, but you wish to do so, you can submit a written comment to Rao Akala Project Manager. There's the address by mail or the email address. And Marcus, if you wouldn't mind pasting Rao's email address into the chat, facilitate people being able to click on that link. That would be helpful. Okay. Now, once again, for comments to be considered as part of the administrative record and for us to consider them when we determine whether to approve the permit or to modify and approve the permit or to deny the permit, we need to receive them by October 19th. They either must be received or, in the case of written comments, postmarked by October 19th for us to consider them. All right, well, thank you everybody for your participation, for your patience. Again, James, can we move to slide 37? And I believe we already displayed this slide. It's a lot of repeat information. Once again, if you want to review the full administrative record, you can find it at the DTSC Chatsworth office, 9211 Oakdale Avenue, Chatsworth, California, 91311. And please call ahead for an appointment to review the record. To review the draft permit, the permit application, the CEQA documents, and many other associated documents, although not the full administrative record, you can also review them at the Santa Fe Springs Library in downtown Santa Fe Springs. And I believe everybody knows where that is, or you can find it easily enough. All right. Thank you very much. James, please move to the next slide. So thank you everybody for participating. That concludes our public meeting and hearing about the Fibertech draft permit. It is September 28th, 2022. Time is now 7:12 p.m. and I am now closing our public hearing and our public meeting. I appreciate everybody's assistance who helped out with this. It was everybody did a great job, and thank you to the attendees for participating.